Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today do we have, finally, a big one that I was actually able to attend and be at pretty much when it is going, or at least early in the stage it feels like, I hope. But again, we got here SSS1-10, and you can see here that we have 066 BxM going up against J3DI, so Jedi but with a 3, and we also have J/02. And again, nice numbers on both sides of the field. Ooh, gosh, just massive AoE range damage going on there right in the beginning. One of the things that you often will hear me talk about, even though, again, I love being able to watch as much PvP as humanly possible, one of the things that I do often mention is, again, just having good spread, right? Not necessarily kind of bunching up and doing this type of hive or like murder ball mentality that we often see kind of coming from something like Rock and other kingdom builders. And that's just because Call of Dragons really demands a kind of higher quality, a higher level of standard, a higher standard, if you will, when it comes to kind of open PvP. Now, bear in mind, when these things are kind of happening in real time and you're doing chasing, right, it, again, is only going to be that much more challenging or difficult to do. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it is a little bit more. Now, typically, when you are in a kind of chasing, we're kind of seeing back and forth here, right? First, we saw, at least when at the beginning of the recording, 066 and BxM, right, pushing Jedi along with J-02, and now you're seeing kind of a little bit of a counter push that's happening now. But this is usually one of the things, right? Typically, you're trying to kind of hit the units that are overextending a little bit too much because you're going to be able to kind of pick off, right? It's almost kind of like doing early poke damage, right? So if you're not necessarily doing full-on engagements, you may just want to focus predominantly on picking apart or picking out the units that are kind of sticking out, right, like sore thumbs the most in your opponent's lineups, especially if, and you can kind of tell this, right, for some that are a little bit more coordinated than others. Now, in this situation, right, you're kind of having Jedi right here with like Northern and Southern Light overextending a little bit much here. That could have been something that BxM and 066 maybe took advantage of. However, it does seem as though the numbers, at least right now, maybe a little bit more in favor of Jedi and J-02, or we should say J3DI. Trying to think of how I could maybe say that differently. But again, right, just not trying to bunch up as much as you are, especially if you're not moving a lot as far as kind of pushing, or if you're not trying to withdraw or fall back, you're kind of stabilizing yourselves on certain lines. That's your opportunity to really just kind of start spreading out. Or if you're able to do those things in real time while you're chasing, right, where you're essentially kind of taking different lines. Like, for example, you could have someone coming up here and then maybe extending as far as like down here by the tree line. Those are things that you can do because all you're essentially having to do is click on your unit and then click the direction that you want to go, where you're still kind of moving forward onto, you know, in your enemy direction or those that you're chasing, but you're doing it and then you're kind of making a slight angle adjustment just so you can spread a little bit more, right? Those are just good practices to do. But again, I mean, I think we're seeing really good numbers here coming out from J-02 and Jedi, at least with their replenishment, right? Or we should say maybe just with them kind of being able to keep up and sustain, because I don't know how much farther they are. I think they're already in, see, they're already in 066 territory. But again, I mean, they have good numbers that are coming up the back right now, right? Kind of looking at those supply lines. 066 BxM, they do. They got more people that are coming too as well. So, I mean, now, in this case, it just depends on maybe how far does J-02 and Jedi really want to push, right? Sometimes we'll see where, and it's interesting because I feel like we've been seeing this a little bit more for some of the battles that I've been watching, where we'll notice that opponents, or we should say the attacking side, is, or even just in general, they just really want to kind of focus on staying on territory, so they do get some of those alliance buffs for fighting on territory. And again, I think we saw this, gosh, I want to remember the names, but I know they're just kind of escaping. I want to say it was like somewhere between 20 and 24 for the SSS1- merged kingdoms, right? And there was some moments where we were watching some fights. I want to say it was in Novola, and it was kind of around, I'm forgetting what, it's the creek that's up there. Let's see if we can scroll out real quick. I don't think we're going to miss any fights. But I do distinctively remember this because it was in, maybe it wasn't, it was. Here we go. It's right at Sandy Creek, right? So I was watching some fights here that were happening kind of right around this area. And essentially, we just didn't really see each side wanting to kind of overcommit. And a big part of that was because, as we somewhat surmised, but in short, kind of just later found out, that they just didn't really want, they just didn't really want to push, right? They didn't really kind of want to push or fight, if you will, off territory as much as they wanted to fight on. Now, again, I don't necessarily think that maybe that's the biggest thing, because it's not as though you're getting such an overwhelming stat percentage increase just from being able to fight. Now, yes, is it something? Of course. But is it to the point of where it's going to like really make or break you 100% of the time, where that is going to be the biggest determining factor? It's not. So, for me, I really think that a level of coordination, a level of structure, communication, those are the things that are really going to impact fights the most, right? And then you're kind of getting to your power, so to speak. Like, for example, with Northern and Southern Light here, we could see, right, you could see those guys, right, top 3, right, they're there in Jedi or J3DI. And let's see if we have anyone else that's kind of over on that side. I imagine those are probably the 2 biggest names. Let's see. 066, yeah. So the next biggest one on the other side would be Louis for 066 at the number 17 position for what we're seeing. Let's see. And then you got Big Red. So that's 3. Yeah, I think that might be it. Wow. It's not a lot, really. So, I mean, you can make the argument J3DI probably has decent, even though with J-02, right, with the person who changed their name to the Mephisto, and then I think Mephisto just had to change his name to Mephisto by itself. But yeah, I mean, again, just to kind of show you there, right? I mean, because like I said, right, you got BxM, you got 066, but I mean, even if we look at, I don't even know where, well, we're probably going to see some fighting here in a bit. Oh, interesting. So they got that one. Now they're putting a lot of pressure right now on the 066 Alliance Tower. About 9 minutes until that bad boy is gone. Oh, man. Here we go with the brawl. Now, now, this is the cool thing. I love watching these types of fights where we're going to be getting action on a flag, where because you're essentially dedicating a portion of your players to flag building, especially if the ones that you're sending are not dedicated engineering, building, or destroying legions, where, excuse me, had to pop that one out, where the legion itself is predominantly focused. Like, for example, you're running someone like an Ordo, I think, or Craig as another example, right? Someone who's, or Nico, right? Someone who's like really, even though you may not necessarily run Nico all the time for that, but point is that if you're running a hero that has an engineering talent tree, you may run one particular legion that is just dedicated or focused on being able to destroy towers or build towers really fast, or flags, we should say. Now, in this case, a little bit, I don't know if we're going to have to lower our render quality. I think we'll probably hold up okay. It's not as though we're seeing, 150, 200 plus marches here, which is nice. But it is great to see a lot of the back and forth. But some of the lagging that you're seeing happening usually is because of something like, render quality. That's what we're not seeing. And I'll give you an example. Let me see if I can go to my settings and maybe change this. So I'm at 1.1. Watch what happens if I go to 1. So if I go down to 1, watch what happens now. Notice how I can immediately see everything. And I can also see, or I should say, I'm able to see a little bit more here when I go down to 1, even though the quality changed a bit. Now, again, I'm not able to see 100% of everything. But what we can say, and then, there's our boy, dude, Hector El Grande. I love this. But by lowering our render quality, it will allow for us to keep up with more of the fights. Now, if I lower this below 1, now the quality is still okay. But if I lower this to, let's say, 0.9, right, that's when I really start noticing the quality becoming a little bit more distorted. And even though at that point I probably would be able to see everything really efficiently, and I'll just give you an example of that, right? So if we go here, let's go render quality 0.9. So we'll go 0.9. Now you can see, I want to say almost everything for the people that are fighting. But the quality is pretty distorted, right? So the one thing we're not able to see right now is numbers, which is, there we go. I mean, we saw a few. But typically in the bigger fights, the lower, at least from what I've noticed, right, the lower that I go in render quality, the right? The more that I'm able to see at that point. So, again, at least from what I've been able to notice. So typically if I'm seeing 150, 200 people on the screen, I might lower my quality down to 1 as an example. But usually like 1.1, 1.2 is typically where I'll keep it. So kind of interesting here on this one, because I know for other battles that I've done, usually, and what typically happens is the moment that I lower render quality to 1, usually, and then even more so with 0.9, but typically once I do lower it to 1, I'm actually able to see like all of the numbers. So maybe there just could have been like some transitional lag or catch up there for maybe latency or something else that maybe factored into why it didn't happen immediately. But now you're seeing, right, with me kind of going back up to 1.1 right now, we're kind of seeing the numbers that are going down. But point is here, I should say, to not get too far off track. Ooh, that was a really nice Shadow Games being thrown down. Terror, Time Bomb, Divine Mercy. You got a Retreating Tears of Arbin there. But again, trying to get some heals off. That Terrifying Inferno getting thrown down. Another counter Shadow Games, just multiple negative purples being thrown. I love it. But in this case, right, and I want to point out, I actually like the job right now that BxM and 066 are doing, right? Notice how wide the spread is here on the arc. This is what I'm talking about. I absolutely love this. Could this actually be a little bit more? It could. But if we're looking at what they're doing with their spread, and that's kind of how it should be. You should be top of the screen, bottom of the screen, at least for me, right, when I'm looking at on my PC client. But this is great. I really like this right now. Right, you're probably going to get I'd give you like a B+, maybe A- here, just because of the amount of people and because you still have some space to spread. But I'm going to give this like a solid A- right now. Like I said, B+ quality, but definitely an A- here on how it looks, based on the space that they were utilizing from the beginning. And I definitely feel that impacted. Now, the big thing is that if they're falling back, the top part here has to be curving, right? You have to be pushing up and keeping that curve intact. And then same thing here on the bottom, right? Keep extending this going south, try and push them from other. But this is really kind of almost a class educational session effort, if you will, on how to spread, how that at least factored into pushing them off, even though, right, some of the big players are over here on the Jetty and J-02 side, right? So this is actually a really nice effort. And again, man, I got to give hats off. I mean, it was a good job. Numbers are still about the same, or I guess you could say maybe they were replenishing a little bit more. But for J-02 and Jetty, it's not as though, or J3DI, it's not as though they are lacking, right? And they have half numbers less than the opposition does, right? They're all pretty close. But again, I think it was really for those tactics that we saw. And I'd be curious to know if BxM or 066, if they're in voice calls, if maybe they have everyone in a voice call and they were just coordinating that. Because again, it did look pretty nice for at least a short period of time. Now in this case, right, with this Madeline, I probably would back this up a little bit. You don't want to overextend too much here. Back it up a bit, and then if you notice that there's times where you can re-engage and maybe send some infantry in, where you're, again, we're kind of reforming that line, focusing on the units that are overextending a little bit. Like in this case, right, with Southern Light, notice how they're backing up, and a lot of their units are not taking an overwhelming amount of damage, but they're able to input a lot of damage onto that Southern Light frontline troop, right? So that's something that actually is what I felt, at least in that right there in that moment, that was actually a good job, where you're backing up enough to where the DPS on your enemy side, in this case Jedi or J3DI and J-02, didn't have as many people near that front line that Southern was pushing up to, so they were not outputting as much damage as they could have. Instead, what ended up happening is that the BxM and 066 side was backed up far enough to where they were able to focus Southern Light's frontline unit while taking minimum damage from the opposing enemy's DPS units. So that was actually a good heads-up play, right? Because again, it's almost, think of it, and again, I'll use the League of Legends reference. It's almost like your tank or your off-tank is trying to go into engage, but your opponents are just kiting so well withdrawing, right? It's like you're withdrawing while you're still firing. Like you're still going back, but you're withdrawing, right? And so being able to do something like that, right, where you're still kind of poking at a distance while not allowing for your opponents to engage you on their terms is really an ideal way. Very similar thing right here. Look at Northern Light, taking all of that damage, at least from a good amount of units, while there's not a lot of other units that are damaging them. So again, pushing in a way where you are supporting your front line, supporting your infantry, to where you're timing out being able, where if they're going to push, you are literally right there. So the moment that they get to the units they need to get to as like a frontline infantry or cav, you as DPS, whether that's your archers, your celestials, your air, or your archer DPS or your marksman, you're able to basically be, right, it's the examples like this. Like, say this is your infantry and this is your DPS. Say the moment you get here to engage, like it has to be moving together. What's happening is that you're seeing the infantry move, engage, and then the marksmen and the mages are then catching up in like a delayed fashion. Now, this is not necessarily something that you would need to kind of always be in voice for. Will these things help? 100%. But if you just coach and educate your players to pay attention to these things when they're happening on the field, you can make good heads-up plays for when those happen. Of course, this then leads your infantry units, your frontline units, or your frontline players to also be the ones who are kind of, I don't want to say kind of dictating pace, but they have to be able to make good plays as well on when they're going to engage, knowing that, okay, well, if I'm going to go in, I'm most likely going to have a supporting cast of however many, and I need to be able to go in and make a good play that is not going to then make my backline DPS go in to an unfavorable matchup where the numbers aren't in our favor, or if it's just a disadvantage, right? If the ratios are more in their favor, so to speak. So that, to me, I think is the one thing, which is interesting because, even if you do not rely, or if you're not able to have a lot of people in voice at all times, kind of going with this type of like Army, Marine type, like think about, you're basically using sign language, right? You kind of have to view it that way, where if you're not always in these situations where you can put yourself in that type of, hey, we're going to have this real-time communication going on, then you have to do a lot of your prep work beforehand, right? Where you basically send out mails, you send out DMs, you get in voice calls with people before wars start, and you let them know, hey, here's our game plan. These are what our signs are going to be. These are what our emoji reactions are going to be. If you see this happening, this is when we engage. If you see this happening, this is when we disengage. If we're falling back, this is when we're going to reform a staging area, so that way we can figure out if we can re-engage or we need to keep pushing back more. These are things, right? Or, hey, if we're engaging and then we know we have like a flanking battalion or a flanking unit that we know is going to flank from the side or from behind, right? And we're trying to time those things out, paying attention and kind of having good awareness of the battlefield. Again, these are just things that I think are really important when it comes to the potential of PvP for what we could see in Call of Dragons that we just can't, in my opinion, see to the fullest extent or to this exact extent in other Kingdom Builders, which is one of the reasons why I just love watching PvP so much in COD, because most of the time, I love seeing the fights, I love seeing the engagements, I love seeing the artifacts used, but I also love the educational side of it. I love the kind of teaching side of what we're analyzing, what we're seeing, or kind of the good and the bad, or the pros and cons, or where the opportunities lie, where are the strengths. Those are things I think that, for me, at least when I'm doing my commentary, whether it's more so color, or if it's mixing in some color and some analytical, those are things I hope can always be good takeaways for the players that are watching, especially if you haven't if you haven't gotten to your Season 2 yet, if you just haven't done any wars, being able to kind of see how other alliances fight, and then being able to kind of point out certain tactics that are being used. Again, like I mentioned, right, the opportunities and the strengths that are being done by both sides. Those are things I think that are going to allow for us to progress as a game when it comes to the standard quality level of PvP, especially across as many kingdoms as possible, more so than, if you're just kind of going into a kingdom and watching it, maybe you just don't have kind of a general idea of what should you be paying attention to, so to speak. Oh man, I wish I had some water with me. Oh, I do. It's really far over there. Let's reach. All right, cool. I'm back. Didn't take that long. All right, good stuff. Let's see. Oh man. Okay, we are back at it right now. Oh gosh, we got some burst strikes. Ooh. Oh my gosh, big royal punishment damage right there for that big arcing swing. I think that was by Koyushu, if I said that right. But gosh, that was big negative damage. Ooh, another royal punishment coming out here by Panic. Ooh, that was big, or at least it felt like maybe it was from Pac, I think. Or maybe Pancakes, who just took the L there. Ooh, negative 11k on the purple right there. That was nice. Tyr Varman getting thrown down here. Can't see exactly who threw it, but again, you're getting your nice 2 cycle for 8 seconds on the heels there. Oh gosh, that time bomb hitting -8. Looks like another one. There we go. Another counter time bomb being thrown down. That ends up hitting a few people. You know, this is the thing about time bombs, right? Is that you're hitting up to 3 players with this, and you could see there, right? You have the primary damage, and you have the additional secondary damage, which isn't too overwhelming, but it is. Ooh, gosh, that sword oath right there, that was just massive. Gosh, I wish I would have been able to at least be paying attention. Ooh, nice shadow games there, hitting up to 3 people. That was great. Again, nice there, and that's something that you're typically seeing. It looks like that was on a marksman unit for that Nico Legion. Counter shadow games, not hitting too many people there from the start. At least it looked like. Might have just been a bit short. Let's see, Jedi coming right back there with J-02. Let's see if BxM and 066 are going to be able to kind of reform their ranks. I don't know what kind of reinforcements we're looking at right now. Yeah, girls, don't be making a mess of your mom's stuff, okay? Oh gosh, these ladies. Alrighty. Taking a little bit of damage there. Let's see here. I mean, again, we'll have to see, man. I mean, maybe 066 and BxM, we're going to see what the replenishment looks like. It doesn't seem as though maybe it's too much right now. Looks like the numbers maybe still a little bit more in favor currently of J-02 and J3DI. We're going to see them, and again, they have a nice little ball right here, but hopefully we're going to continue seeing a little bit more of what we just saw, because I really think that played a huge factor in them being able to push off J-02 and BxM, or sorry, J-02 and J3DI a little earlier for how spread they were. I just thought there was a lot of good things that they were doing there. So, yeah, we're going to see. Ooh, gosh, the defense break coming in there for Emma Shine from J-02 with the back and forths. And again, you can just see, look at the hurting, right? This is just like such a deep hive right there, which usually in those cases is just prime for just AoE damage. Big sword oath being thrown down. Ooh, gosh, that was massive. Negative 13 or 14k damage we saw being done up there. That burst strike, doing a little bit, another burst strike time bomb being thrown down too. And you're kind of seeing like those -1, -2Ks from the burst strike, it looked like was being thrown down. That thunder shadow, another sword out, -5, -6K. Big royal punishment strike there, 4 damage. Wow, that was massive there, whether that was from Beast or Kuki maybe. Oh no, there's Beast royal punishment. Oh gosh, massive negative purples. That was nice. Was that Tear of Arbin being thrown down here? A little bit of healing. Maybe was a little bit too forward. I probably would have thrown it a little bit more toward the ridge there. Again, J-02, J3DI still kind of bunching up, at least on their end too as well, right? We're not really seeing too much of spread. But again, I guess at the end of the day, when you have the numbers and you maybe have enough power on your side as well, right? That's one of the things that you can kind of default to. And, you know, again, if your opponents are not, or if one side isn't, you know, kind of as organized, or, you know, kind of being able to kind of counter that, then, you know, that's something that can work. You know, for me, which again is nothing ever, it's nothing ever against anyone who uses that. My view, as you've heard me say constantly, is that I would just love for us to see, you know, what I would consider just to be like the next level, or just higher levels of kind of quality PvP or PvP that we can see and talk about, where we're kind of resembling more of that type of MOBA, traditional RTS style. Again, there will be some exceptions. For example, in the very beginning where we mentioned, like if you're chasing and, you know, you're just kind of going together, you're basically just like saying, okay, well, I'm going to click here, then I'm going to click there, right? As, oopsies, didn't mean to go all the way in there. But yeah, if I'm going to click on this unit and then I'm going to click over here or something, right? Because you're just trying to take the shortest line, or intercept line in order to get to your opponents. Like, again, I get it. Totally understood. For me, like I said, you know, being able just to watch as much PvP as I can is always enjoyable. And we're definitely getting our PvP fill here. That is for sure. Looks like Northern Light, a little bit of a flank here with a few units. Like, what was that? Trident and another. Ooh. Oh my gosh, was that -50k? For whatever that was sick. If that was right. I can't believe the one who saw it. That looked like that was -50k purple right there. That was pretty cool. Well, cool as in just a high number. That's what I should say. So yeah, looks like right now, looks like J3DI, J-02 pushing BxM, pushing 066 a little bit more here. I think they're still removing that flag, wherever it was that we saw. Oh, no, sorry. I think they already removed it. Yeah, so they just removed it. And you can kind of see here from the overhead. I guess we're going to have to see what's going to happen here. if they're going to decide to... Gosh, this Hector El Grande. There we go. We fixed it. We just zoom in, zoom out real quick. And this, so, like, for me, this is, something I want to mention, right? And I'm curious how many of you feel the same way that I do on this, because one of the things that I would love to have happen is, you see this viewing interface? I would love for us to be able to toggle this on and off, where you can choose what stays. Or you can kind of go into like a war mode, where, for example, if I zoom out, you'll notice I have this toggle top left, where I can do something like this. I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that when we're fighting, but maybe you just keep the chat up, right? As an example. That to me would be really cool. So that way you just don't have to worry about accidentally clicking on things. And I feel like it could make the fights and the battles just that much more engaging, where you have less likely to make like just little small errors, right? Kind of unforced errors, if you will. So I'd be curious to hear what you guys think on that. If they allowed for you to kind of toggle the closer interface, where maybe you just left the chat up, or if you had the option to toggle it off, leave chat up, or toggle it off completely where chat and everything else is removed. Like, to me, that actually seems like that could be really cool. Here we go now, dude. BxM and 066 making maybe a little bit of a counter push here. Again, the flag was removed. So we'll have to see. I imagine they'll probably fight. I don't know if we're going to see an immediate flag being dropped here. Probably by other side, at least until maybe they can establish some control. There's a lot of these guys moving back. Oh, I wonder if this is just all the... Oh, gosh, look at this, dude. And then they have another little staging area right there. So I wonder what they're going to do here. Are they going to just move all the way back? I mean, this is a great opportunity for BxM and 066. And again, here's another good example, right? Spreading out a little bit. Look, I mean, again, you have a nice little spread here that they're doing, even while they're chasing, which... This is kind of what we were talking about, right? I mean, yeah, could it be a little better? Sure. But is it actually decent? Yeah, I would say it is. I would argue this is decent. So now we're going to have to see with them pushing here and how far are they going to go. Are they going to go deep here into territory? Are they going to try and maybe remove some of the people there on that flag? Interesting. Where are we at right now? Almost 28 minutes. Man, this has been great. These are the types of big fights that I love being able to watch. And I want to point out, all size fights I'm happy to, but just the bigger ones that I can get in on, I'm always more excited just because of the sheer number of players that are there, right? Not necessarily kind of speaking on the quality or not, but more so the quantity, I think. Maybe just because base for kind of... Ooh, that Vicious Strike being thrown down. Oh, gosh, you see those arrows. So Vicious Strike, that's the... Oh my gosh, excuse me in case anyone heard that. Wow, that was a little loud. But the Vicious Strike, right, the 3 arrows that are going down, so you kind of see that baseball field that is formed there, Tear of Arbin being thrown down, right? And then you're kind of getting those 3 ginormous arrows that are being thrown down, right, for that up to 3 times damage. So it looks like BxM and 066 kind of holding off. They're not necessarily pushing in, or at least it doesn't feel like they're maybe going hard. It feels like they're kind of just teetering on the perimeter. Which, again, we'll have to see what J-02... I mean, this is kind of an opportunity for them. J-02 and Jetty could actually push in a little bit, even if they just wanted to kind of go to this line here where you see, like, Lewis and, you know, some Duke and Dutchness, right? And just kind of go in here within the flag area just to kind of pick off some units, right? And then just paying attention over here to the ramp to see if they're going to come down. I mean, it looks like they're probably restaging, so I'd imagine they're going to go back at it. But this is at least nice to see. So hopefully they'll kind of look at these opportunities. It looks like they kind of are, right? Pushing in, maybe trying to remove that Miss C. If there's anyone maybe gathering, right, that could be another opportunity as well, where you're not overextending, you're not going too deep, but you're going far enough to where you're comfortable, right, in order to be able to disengage or withdraw if needed. So, alrighty, guys, we're almost at 30 minutes here. I'm going to go ahead and call this. This has been awesome. So I just want to say, man, thank you for this back and forth. This has been great. Watching this from 066 and from 066 BxM and then J3DI, Jedi. And I'm sure I probably said Jetty a couple times too as well. It's not my fault. Just my brain is defaulting to that. And then J-02 for their fights that have been going on, man. This is the great stuff I love watching. And so I hope you guys enjoy these whenever I am able to capture. That's going to be it for me. So again, man, as always, until next time, I will catch you later.